Hello and welcome to the autoX show. Now sit back, don't go anywhere, because on the show today, we've got some of the finest vintage and classic machines in the country. We also bring you a big bruiser of an SUV in the desert. But first, here's the most affordable middleweight adventure motorcycle in the country.
Italian bike manufacturer Benelli has been around since 1911. Now that's more than 100 years. But in India, they entered the market in 2014 and they were very successful. Unfortunately, they ran into some legal problems, but now the Italian manufacturer is back and they've brought in their first product, which is the TRK 502. Now, the TRK 502 was first shown to us at EICMA about 4 years ago. The bike looks fantastic and we've been very eager to ride it. And now we're here in this beautiful location of Chikmagalur in Karnataka, and we're going to ride these bikes and find out just how good they are. The TRK 502 has been launched in two different variants in the country. You have the base 502 and then you have the 502X, which is more off-road oriented. The 502 is an adventure sports tourer. Now, the good thing is this bike has been priced at 5 lakh rupees ex-showroom. And that's a very nice price for a mid-segment adventure tourer. A couple of things we really like about the bike is the way it looks. It actually is very big. Its dimensions are humongous for a 500cc. More importantly, it weighs about 230 kilograms, which is very, very heavy. That's almost near Multistrada 1200 and Tiger 1200 area. So it's a very big machine. This model has got a lower seat. It comes at 800 millimeters. It's also got inverted front forks. It's got very nice brakes as well. It's got dual 320 millimeters up front and it's got a single 260 millimeter at the rear. The design is very good. The fuel tank is very big and wide. The front section, the beak is nice. It gives that traditional adventure style look. One thing I would like to say is it's also a very comfortable machine. Ergonomically, it's a very sound, comfortable machine. If you're a beginner and you're looking to upgrade from a smaller capacity bike to a bigger one, this is a great bike to start with because it's big, it's comfortable, and the engine is very nice. It's a 500cc engine. It gets about 47 brake horsepower and 48 Newton meters of torque, which is very usable anywhere you go pretty much. This is obviously more a road centric. So it's got 17-inch alloys on the front and 17-inch alloys at the rear. It's a really good bike on tarmac. Surprisingly, even though it weighs a lot, it's very manageable. It handles brilliantly. I wouldn't say it's the best handling motorcycle in the segment. It obviously competes with the Suzuki V-Strom 650 and the Kawasaki Versys 650. Those are much better machines overall, of course. Going lower down, you have the BMW G310 GS. But again, this engine is much more refined than that. You also have the Kawasaki 300X. This machine is much better than that. Even though those two machines cost about the same, this one has a lot more power, it's way more comfortable, and it's way more usable and fun. The instrument cluster is analog and digital, and the windscreen is very nice, protecting you from all that wind blast. Overall, the throttle isn't that instant. It does lag a little bit, I would say. Obviously, it's a very heavy machine, but it is smooth. It doesn't pick up speed like blazingly fast. But it is fun and it does move pretty quick. What I also like is the way the bike sounds. They've tuned the exhaust to sound really nice. It sounds almost like a triple, even though this is a twin cylinder. The engine is also liquid cooled, so it doesn't heat up much, and it is very hot where we're riding right now. We rode on some very beautiful roads, some mountain roads here in Chikmagalur. Overall, the bike handles really well. Suspension-wise also, it's not very soft and it's not very stiff. It's got a great balance in between somewhere. So if you are going on some bumpy roads, it absorbs everything pretty nicely. It also has ABS, which you can switch on and off, and the ABS system works really well. Other than that, it's a very basic motorcycle. There are no electronics, there's no gizmos, hardly any new technology involved. So yeah, for 5 lakhs, you get what you pay for pretty much. It's not blazingly fast, it's not the best handling, but it's still a very nice motorcycle to upgrade to. It's a very nice motorcycle to invest in if you want to do some very nice sports touring and learn how to handle a very big bike. Now this, as I mentioned before, is more suited for road conditions. The 502X is the hardcore off-roader, and it's got a lot of different changes. This is what I'm going to show you right now. So this is the 502X, and in terms of dimensions and everything, it's the exact same motorcycle. The main difference is it's got a much higher ground clearance. This one is 210 compared to the 180 that you have on the 502. It also gets a swept up exhaust, and it's got more travel suspension, and you can also take off the rubber mountings on the foot pegs so you get additional grip. And this bike also gets Metzeler tires, whereas the 502 gets Pirellis. This has also got knuckle guards, and it also, both bikes come with the USB, which I forgot to mention earlier. The seat height is also higher. This is 840 millimeters, whereas the 502 is 800. So this bike, obviously, it's raised up and it's meant for proper off-roading. It even has a bash plate at the bottom. So we've ridden around the coffee plantation that we're staying in, and it's got some very nice dirt trails. So we got to experience this bike on some very novice off-roading riding. So starting off with the engine, once again, what I really like though is the suspension. Even though it is on the stiffer side, it still absorbs mostly everything very, very well. The engine, once again, it's smooth. It doesn't really pull very nicely when you're going uphill. It's more than what you need pretty much. It's a very nice motorcycle. It's fun. The ground clearance is great as well. Handling, it doesn't have the best steering geometry, but I would say that if you are not a very tall rider, you would have some problems because the seat height is very high and it's non-adjustable on this. Of course, you can get a whole bunch of accessories as well on both bikes. If I were to go for either one, I would definitely go for the 502X because it does suit a much bigger rider, which is me. I'm 6 feet tall, so this is a much better machine for me. Overall, the riding dynamics are more or less the same. This obviously does get a 19-inch at the front as well, which is more off-road centric. It's a very basic motorcycles. They're not high-tech. There's no gadgetry involved. It's just you and the bike, and it's pure motorcycling. This one obviously costs a little bit more than the 502, but overall, they're great bikes. Not the most powerful, not the most nimble, but still very nice machines if you want to upgrade. So Benelli has launched the TRK 502 at a very attractive price, 5 lakh. Now that's really, really good. However, when you compare to the competition, if you have the V-Strom, if you have the Kawasaki Versys 650, those bikes are a lot better in terms of quality, in terms of refinement, and in terms of performance. But like I said, these are bikes you can upgrade to, and they're affordable and they're accessible. They're not the best handling, the quality isn't the best, but they are still very nice motorbikes. Personally, if I wanted to upgrade from a Himalayan or a KTM Duke to a much bigger bike for a tourer, I would definitely look at these two machines right here. They're very nice. They have good features as well. They both come with ABS. They have LED lights, and it's just a really good package for the price you're paying. So you can't go wrong. So if you have the opportunity, head down to Benelli dealership and go for a test ride.
Now don't go anywhere, because when we come back, Ishan tells you why you should choose an SUV over a Camel. Welcome back to the AutoX show. Now the Ford Endeavour has pretty much won every single comparison test that we've subjected it to over the past couple of years. But Ford has nevertheless applied a bit of spit and polish. Here's the facelifted Endeavour.
If you're looking for go anywhere ability, it's hard to beat a Camel. They can literally go anywhere, they can do insane amounts of off-roading, and they can go for days without even a drop of water. But a Camel has its practical problems. You would find it hard to park. Diet, well, that's one issue, and maintenance, well, that's a completely different issue altogether. Ford India's new product, however, Ford claims, offers you all the off-road ability you'll ever need, with the practicality that you require for an everyday car. The vehicle I'm talking about is of course the new Ford Endeavour. If you look at the history of the Endeavour in India, this is third generation car facelifted. It's always been a good seller. You know, before the EcoSport came along, the Endeavour was really what established the Ford brand in SUVs in India. It was quite popular. Of course, the Fortuner then came into the picture and that changed things slightly. But it still remains a really capable vehicle. The new Endeavour has tweaks, slight changes to it. The powertrain remains essentially the same. We'll talk about that later. But main changes that you see are small design changes. You see, you get that new hexagonal Ford grille that's now a design signature worldwide. You get new front bumpers, skid plates, new 18-inch design alloys, slight changes to equipment, slightly more equipment is added on. There's a new trim version that's being added on. Earlier in the 2.2 litre version, they discontinued the manual transmission, but they're coming back with it again because they say there's a lot of customer demand. What are we going to do next? Well, Ford thinks one of the talking points of the Endeavour is its off-road ability, like I said earlier. So they've got us to the sand dunes of Jaisalmer. First thing we're going to do, take it out off-road, see how it performs. After that, we'll take it on road and give you an overall review of what the new car is like. The Endeavour, of course, is based on a ladder frame chassis. The version we are driving is the 3.2 litre 6-speed auto. And to make it very capable off-road, of course, it's got good approach angles, departure angles, lots of ground clearance, big tires, all-wheel drive system. But it's got 4 special driving modes. You get snow, you get rock, but what we're using, of course, in this terrain is sand. And it's very effective. You know, the power, the 200 PS of power and the 470 Nm of torque really helps. 6-speed automatic works really well. And if you get stuck, which is quite easy in Jaisalmer to do, you always have the 4 low. The instructors have been teaching us a lot of off-roading. They've taken us through some serious dips. There's a lot of sand. It's really fine and it can be quite difficult to drive. And I think if you see from the footage, it's been quite an experience to see a car this big, this heavy, being this capable. That's not easy. But the real test of the car, you know, very few people who own a car like the Endeavour take it off-road, is going to be how it behaves on road. That's what we're going to find out in a later part of the video. The term SUV is a rather abused one in today's motoring world. You know, SUVs are supposed to be cars that are capable of many things. They're capable of going off-road, they're capable of being good on-road, they're spacious, you know, very versatile. But most SUVs sold today can't do any of that. They're capable on-road, that's pretty much it. I mean, they look aggressive and you can inflate your ego. But what Ford is trying to change with the Endeavour, especially with the facelift, is the fact that this is a true blue SUV in every sense of the word. So, you know, as we saw earlier in the video, you can take it off-road. For a car of its size, for a car of its weight, it's phenomenally capable. It is capable of things that I never thought possible. It was a revelation to me. However, most customers, 99.9% of customers buying the Endeavour in India will never take it off-road. So we are back to its natural habitat, the main road, you know. Back on the highway, maybe going out to a long road trip, maybe to the mall, maybe dropping kids to school. How does it fare? Well, I have to say, for a ladder frame chassis, which helps very much if you want something that's capable of off-road, the Endeavour's ride and handling setup is absolutely fantastic. It rides very well. You know, most cars, especially the Fortuner, in this segment, slightly have this jiggly ride unless you're on a perfect road. Endeavour, not really. It rides flat, it rides smooth, and high-speed stability, despite the high center of gravity of the car, is not a problem at all. So that way it works very well. And that's a surprise. You know, Ford's engineers have already also worked on how the car's driving appeal is, and with the 6-speed automatic, with the steering feel, it's actually a really good car to drive. You know, it's a car that I enjoy driving, and I never thought I would say this about a car of this size. Refinement also is something that Ford has particularly worked on. The Endeavour features active noise cancellation, you know, like Bose does on its headphones. So you've got speakers and a processor working in the car at all times to eliminate the engine noise. And you can feel that the engine noise is quite low. NVH levels are very controlled. And the quality also feels very well done. You know, you've got a leather-lined dash, soft touch plastics. The doors, when you close them, feel quite good. you've got an electric tailgate, you've got a full panoramic sunroof. The multimedia system also comes in for special praise because it's a decent system, the resolution is quite good. But what I really like about Ford's interface is the fact that instead of giving it small microscopic controls and sense things you have to touch to change and adjust, they've given it big blocks. That helps because every time you have to use a touchscreen, you have to take your eyes off the road. And if there's a big block, it's easier to use that way. That obviously is a big convenience factor. I'm not a fan of touchscreens, but this one is definitely one of the better ones that I've seen. They've also added more features to the car. They're going to do two engine versions, 2.2 litre, of course, like the earlier one, 3.2 litre, the one that we're driving. Engines remain unchanged. The 3.2 only comes with a 6-speed automatic. 2.2 comes with a 6-speed automatic and a manual. What they're trying to do, and they've also simplified the trim version. So instead of having 4 or 5 trim versions of each engine, now they're only going to be 2 trim versions in the 2.2, 1 trim version in the 3.2. They've also been concentrating on the maintenance cost because that's a sort of an image issue that Ford suffers with, and they've been trying to rectify that. And according to them, I think the 2.2 only averages 68 paisa per kilometer for 100,000 kilometers maintenance wise, and the 3.2 is about 76, 72, 76, something like that. So it seems to be a rather reasonable amount. However, overall, what do I think of the Endeavour? I think as a package, if you need a SUV this size, if you need an SUV that you can drive every day, if you need an SUV you can take on weekend trips with your family, and especially an SUV that you can take off-road, the Endeavour is fantastic. I've always believed with this Gen Endeavour that this is a fantastic car, and driving it off-road, taking it everywhere, I think this is the best package that your money can buy, bar none. Also, what really gets my vote for the Endeavour, it's a fun car to drive. And like I said earlier, that's not something I thought I would ever say about a car this size. But it's a great fun car to drive, and that works for it. It looks butch. It's got everything going for it. So if you're in the market for a Fortuner or an Isuzu MU-X or the Alturas, I would think you should look at the Endeavour, because this for me offers the best deal your money can buy in this segment.
Now don't go anywhere because we've got a lot more coming up after the break. Welcome back to the AutoX show. Now the Cartier Travel with Style d'Elegance takes place every 2 years and showcases some of the finest and best preserved machines in the country. Some of these cars have gone on to be showcased on the lawns at Pebble Beach. So Ishan cleans himself up and heads to the Rambagh Palace in Jaipur to check out the 6th edition of the Cartier Concours.
The Cartier Concours is a celebration of automotive history, specifically Indian automotive history. It's a celebration of cars that our fathers, our grandfathers, our earlier generations have driven in India for almost 100 years. In fact, there's a Renault here which has been in India for over 100 years. It's a fascinating sort of insight into how automotive transportation was 30, 40, 50, 70, 80 years ago, how people commuted, and how also cars became an actual part of our culture. It's fascinating to see cars that are family heirlooms, cars that are passed on from generation to generation. It's phenomenal, and they've got some phenomenal cars. They've got Rolls Royces, they've got Bentleys, they've got Packards, they've got Jaguars. I mean, it's fascinating to see how much variation there was in Indian culture in the earlier years. So we're going to do that today and get you an in-depth view of a Cartier Concours. Of course, no sports car class at a Concours anywhere in the world, especially at the Cartier Concours in India, would be complete without some British and Italian cars. So what we have here is very interesting. There's a Series 1 E-Type, of course, you know. It's a benchmark of what British cars could do. It's one of the highlights of what British car industry has done over the years. There are of course two beautiful Alfa Romeos. I really love this 2000. It's in stellar condition. It's mint. I mean, I can't tell you how desirable, how clean and how nice this car is. You know, the small size, the engine, it's something I would love to drive every day. It's fascinating. So is the 1715 GTV that you see here, 1750 GTV rather, sorry, my mistake. Then of course is another Series 3, another E-Type. This is the Series 3, it's a V12, highly desirable again. You can see with the design that it's something that has been for the past 50 years a fascination of car lovers the world over. And topping it off are of course two Ferraris. You know, you can't have a sports car class without Ferraris. This is a 365. It's in quite decent condition. It's a rare car, I think the only one of its kind in India. And there's a 308 GTS. The 308 really started Ferrari's transition into what they call entry-level sport cars. You know, there might be Ferraris, but there's also entry-level. There's fancy cars. The 308 GTS really marked a transition of Ferrari in the late 80s, late 70s, late 80s rather. And as a 1979 car, this is a rare car for a concours display. So that's a fascinating history of sport cars in India. Of course, a standout feature of this year's concours, a surprise rather, are the workhorses. The cars, buses, trucks that were used as public transportation, as utility. As you can see, this pickup truck next to me, this bus next to me, and it's a unique transportation class, something that has not been worked upon in any other concours or vintage show in India at any point of time. And you can see the interesting touches. You could see, like Mr. Manvendra Singh says later in his interview, you could see how our basic architecture and buildings used to transform, or used to rather inspire what cars were like. You can see these windows, you see the framing, you see the artwork. It's all based on how buildings were. It's a very similar window. So it's fascinating to see. That's an insight that you do not get into Indian culture. And Mr. Manvendra Singh later in our review today gives you an idea of how this works. At the Cartier Concours 2019, we are with Mr. Manvendra Singh Barwani. He's the main curator and the main driving force behind the event. So when you first started the Cartier Concours in India, what was your thought behind the whole show?
Well, first, Mark Shand was the guy who conceptualized the show. In 2008, contacted me. My only asking condition was that Cartier gave me absolutely a blank sheet, and there will be no objection from anyone. Whatever I say goes. And I was quite surprised when they said yes, and the CEO of Cartier sent me a letter stating that, because I didn't believe them. They said, I wanted in writing, then said it. That's the beginning of this thing. The other reason I feel now after so many years that 2008 I exhausted in one go the finest cars of India, yeah. which was a little bit, had I known that this is going to go on, I would have saved some few in my sleeves, you know.
And this year you've pulled a real ace up your sleeve with the transportation class. What was the thought behind that class?
You know, I'm running out of ideas. But when I look at my old car photographs in the evening sometimes to see the records or research something, I suddenly struck me that between 1900 and maybe 1933-34, India did not have a design shop for bus bodybuilding or truck bodybuilding, and they had distinct Indian features. So when you look at that particular bus there and look at the arches on the building there, they are similar. So the idea forms that the guy who was working on the building was also working on these buses. And evolution of automobiles, whether it is from bullock carts to horse carriages to buses, has reflected our country's heritage and culture. So that's why I said, let me bring this in, because this is going to get destroyed. Nobody's looking at this. They're all crashing it and trashing it. At the same time, some people said, you bring it to Cartier, the prices shoot up. I said, let the prices shoot up. But I'm saving something, and that's been my ambition now, or obsession, to save the heritage of this country some way or the other, whether I'm capable of it or not, but I'm trying at least.
A pleasure, sir, and absolute pleasure, and we look forward to next.
The Best to Show award in the car category at the 2019 Cartier Concours went to the stunning 1935 Rolls-Royce Phantom 2 Continental of Mr. Amir Ali Jetha, while the Best to Show in the motorcycles category went to the 1940 Indian Junior Scout of Mr. Sandeep Kapoor. With the 2019 edition of the Concours coming to a close, this ended our biannual peek into the rich history of automobiles in India. and as always, leaving us hungry for more such gorgeous automobiles in the next edition of the event.
Well, that's all the time we have for you today. Thank you for joining us. Remember to follow us on social media for your daily dose of all things automotive. And remember, it's chaos out there, so always buckle up and wear your helmets. We'll see you again next week on the AutoX Show.